welcome back. It's Coffee with Filter, or no filter. Coffee with no filter. It's been a long time. My gosh, and family life, everything got in the way. But welcome back to all three of us.
Yeah. So glad
nice.
to be back. It's so nice to see everyone
it's
again.
So nice
it's almost like we were having a little bit of a
hibernation.
Like which is what I tend to do.
Like mama bears.
Yeah.
That's what we were.
Now it's springtime. It's suddenly like, oh, peekaboo.
I feel I am loving the light. I don't know how long this will last, but I'm loving it.
It's so good to have it as well. You feel your mood is lifting. You feel you're more creative or able to do other things than just get up, go to work and come back and fight with the kids.
Segues right when it makes me feel a bit more resilient in life.
Yay.
Well, today's topic that we were hoping to discover and explore a bit more is resilience. I think we all know a bit of resilience, or whatever we know we don't know. We're going to explore and learn more about it today together, because I think we've realised this is a journey that we're going to be continue learning,
especially within our communities where we find ourselves. Well, what is it? I think I don't know how much we know about it. I know there was initially it was a lot of like we probably learned about resilience in medicine first before we learned about
I twitch a little when they say resilience in medicine now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think we are, but I think it's more important in our personal lives, family lives, with our kids. I think we're going to try and focus as much as we can on our kids today, but I think we need to first figure out, okay, what is resilience in itself, and then
what is resilience, or what is our definition of it?
I think for me, I'll say from what I understand from when I first heard it is that it is our ability to face adversity or challenges and go from a happy place to accepting it, almost falling back a little bit, but the ability of ourselves to be able to bounce back and specifically to grow, because I think we were previously, when we were trying to figure out what resilience is, she said, I'm not resilient. And I thought, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. And then she explained it and I thought that was fabulous. I thought you have to say that. So what would you say you are then?
For classic definition, I think I would agree with you. Like the phrase "bounce back" like a rubber band. Like, and if you face some challenges, like being able to stand back up again, that probably to me describes resilience. Where I would differ would be like I was kind of saying to you is like like in an application form or CV, like I would never like put myself down as resilient. I would always say like I'm adaptable, which sounds very similar and quite interchangeable as well. But adaptable to me is like, I think I was going to say, like if you put yourself in a box, you're you would survive. You would try and like and get out. You know that you would get out, but and when you get out, like you'd be like, oh no, that's fine. That was a fine experience. And, that to me is kind of like being adaptable to that kind of situation. But what you go through when you're in that box, what your insides would be like.
Voice.
Exactly. That to me is resilience. I was saying to you, like, and obviously, like, now that we're talking about it today, like everywhere I look, it's just resilience kind of screaming out loud.
Yeah.
Like before we kind of left the cafe and I nipped into the toilet and there was an older woman who was like kind of going into the toilet and there was a kid on the other end and she opened the door and it banged the other kids like in the head. Obviously the older woman kind of felt bad, but the kid just kind of walked on. She was fine, but resilience to me is sometimes if that kind of happens, it goes like, oh, I'm okay, it's okay, or acknowledging it and just kind of saying that, right, okay, that's fine, you're okay, like, does that kind of make sense? But sometimes you kind of go into that kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to walk on. I'm just going to avoid, like,
I used to describe myself in medicine. I'm going to use it. Or I think I told my GP training supervisor this when I was in training. It's like, I'm like water. I'll get used to it. I'll expand when I need to and I'll freeze up when I need to and I'll get on with it. I think that's adaptability, not resilience, because I'm not really learning anything when I'm doing that. Well, I'm learning, I suppose, medical issues.
You're sponging.
Yeah, I'm not growing.
You're taking on board, but you're not growing.
And I'm burning out.
Yeah.
And I'm just like a hamster on a wheel and I'm just burning out rather than taking a moment to see and analyzing it and say, actually, that was not very nice that they did that. That surgeon was rude to me. That wasn't very nice. And that doesn't reflect on me. It actually probably reflects on how they are. And if there's anything I can do to improve myself, I can do that. And forgiving yourself, having a lot of self-compassion, and then filling your cup to build yourself up
forward.
again. That's resilience.
That is resilience. And I think, in my kind of line of work, I use a lot of analogies, and like one of my young people used to kind of call me Jesus because apparently I use a lot of parables to explain.
I love it.
Explain, the kind of serious, difficult thing, right? Okay, my mum would be proud.
That's what we were brought up with.
Yeah, we are.
How are we supposed to do that?
Exactly. But what you just said, like if you imagine like a wee plant or a tree, like obviously, like, we're living in Scotland as well, like, we face a lot of different weather kind of conditions every day. Like, and how the tree or the plant would cope, you can see what you see on the outside is what that to me is adaptability. Like, and obviously, like, you see if the tree is thriving or coping with the conditions and managing it okay, and you can tell by the look of it, like from the trunk upwards. But resilience to me is what happens underneath
The roots.
the roots. Do you know what I mean?
We're so used to brushing everything under the carpet, though.
Exactly, which is why I kind of flinched a little bit, like earlier on when I said, when you were kind of saying, like, as a parent, when children are facing problems and challenges, we should be there. We should give them a message, I'm right here. I'm going to help you, which we should, obviously, like, and obviously given their age and stage, you need to kind of give that kind of reassurance that, you as a parent or an adult or a carer, you're going to be there. But majority of the resilience or their challenges, they face, like, when you're not with them. So you start with your inner voice, like, and obviously you would say, like, look, I know that's really hard. I'm gonna keep doing this. I know it's really hard. I'm right here. Do you want to try and, like, do that? So you become their inner voice, like, and so that way, when you're not with them in a situation, like, it's not you they're looking for, it's your kind of voice, it's your kind of narrative kind of thing. So that root development, that's what you kind of call it as resilience kind of thing, whether it's like flooding, storming, like snow, whatever it is. If you've got
we have that, though.
So I was going to...
No.
Well, I was going to say, I think നമ്മളെ പഠിപ്പിച്ചേക്കുന്നത് move on. Like,
ആരും ഒന്നും അറിയണ്ട, ഇത് വീട്ടിലെ കാര്യം ദൈവത്തിൽ സമർപ്പിച്ചു. So religion കുറിച്ച്, we were just speaking about religion earlier, and speaking about Jesus here, and I think maybe it's because the generation before us didn't know more about it, didn't have the luxury to learn more about parenting itself, but they were reliant on even older generations and how they just said, well, God's got it. What's the point of talking about it? I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to worry about it. It's all done. God's just going to have to fix it.
നമ്മൾ വിചാരിക്കും നമ്മളുടെ പേരൻസിനോട് പറയാതിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ അത് അവരെ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടിക്കുന്നില്ല, അവർക്ക് ഒരു ബുദ്ധിമുട്ട് വരുന്നില്ല. നമ്മൾ അതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് മിണ്ടാതിരിക്കുവാണെങ്കിൽ ചിലപ്പോൾ അത് നടന്നിട്ടില്ല. So this kind of stuff where deniability, there is no accountability to it,
conflict avoidance,
and എല്ലാം ഒന്ന് ബ്രഷ് ചെയ്ത് മാറ്റി വെക്കുക, under the carpet, as we'd say it.
What we're not used to is sitting in the discomfort. That's what we're not used to.
So for me, അത് കാരണമാണ് നമ്മൾ adaptable ആകുന്നത്. We are able to adapt to any situation, but we are on a hamster wheel, and at some point we will be falling off.
And we become dysregulated.
And we'll go through all of that. We'll try and give explanations as to what these words mean, or the hard words. So if you think about it, just between adaptability and resilience, namakku adaptability aanu, which is good strength, because we're able to move on from one, but we never process it. We don't sit down. Parents in the kude, partners in the kude, pillarde kude.
It affects all of them.
Yes. Don't feel like we are preaching it as if we know. We just recognize it, and we are saying it out there.
We have the luxury to do it as well. I have to acknowledge, and this is nothing to do with blaming. Gabor Mate was one of the psychologists.
Oh, I love
one of
him.
he's
I hate him at the same time.
yeah, I actually really like him
Yeah.
because parts of him, not all, only because I don't understand some things that he's saying,
Mm-hmm.
but I really like him because he focuses not on blaming. He's like, but blaming someone and keeping someone responsible is
Yeah.
two different things.
Absolutely.
Agree.
And
Yeah.
when we recognize something and acknowledging that didn't work for me, so I don't want to pass it on. It's not like a family wealth,
Yeah.
mental
So,
health illness is not something you want to pass on.
well, that's നമ്മളതാ ചെയ്തേക്കുന്നത് പക്ഷേ
Yeah,
ജനറേഷൻസ് ആയിട്ട് നമ്മളതാ ചെയ്യിക്കുന്നത് നമ്മളുടെ
wounded, hurt
Under
people,
generational
yeah.
trauma.
And more importantly, അതാ നമ്മൾ കണ്ടേക്കുന്നത്
Yeah.
every time we have the news on, which is really hard. Now I have significantly reduced watching TV
Good.
in front of kids, as in like news, okay?
Yeah.
കാരണം നമ്മളുടെ നാട്ടില് if you ഏഷ്യാനെറ്റ് ന്യൂസ് തുറന്നാലും
yeah.
No,
BBC ന്യൂസ് തുറന്നാലും
Yeah.
oh, it's all
It's
just bad news is news.
it's they're perpetuating that
Fear.
Fear, and you're almost saying living like ഇതാ ഇവിടെ നടക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത് നമ്മൾ പുറത്തോട്ട് ഇറങ്ങുമ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ കൊച്ചേ ഇപ്പം പുറത്തോട്ട് പോകാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല like no.
In all honesty, I would do that. I would not go.
Yes,
and, like,
that's the
and
problem.
I would listen.
That is the problem. So what I'm trying to say is നമ്മൾ ജനറേഷൻസ് ആയിട്ട് ഇങ്ങനെ ഓരോ കാര്യങ്ങളും അടുത്ത ജനറേഷൻസിന് കൊടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. നമ്മൾ റെക്കഗ്നൈസ് ഇപ്പം ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അത് we have to try and break it to a certain extent. And that is not easy because what we know is what we know. To go and find the information, this is why we're doing it. So we have recognized, okay, there might be something that we can change here.
Yeah.
So literally what I'm trying to say is, look, we are adaptable. We are still not as good of a resilience, which we just recognize that we might be able to do stuff now to help our kids so that they are able to become resilient.
Yeah.
We might not be able to achieve it, but it's how much we try and if we've tried.
Yeah.
So resilience in the പറയുന്നത്, we want them to look at an adversity, understand, okay, I've fallen down, but at the same time process that with us so that they are able to go and grow
Yeah.
And
And
when-
be compassionate towards oneself.
to ourselves.
Yeah.
So how are we going to become resilient? Is that-
Well.
One is definitely compassion, but more importantly, namla, you were saying, will kids come and tell you? One of the biggest things in any place, to be honest, but one of the things that are brushed under the carpet is when we have family itself related sexual trauma within children. So you working with that, I asked you the question, you asked me the question, would you have gone to your parents to say that this has happened or I was approached, and don't think this is within, yes, most amount of stuff that happen in India or where we are from tends to be within family or outward, but significantly within family. And that, but here as well, actually, to be honest, you probably see most within family as well. But yes, there are other external sources
Not
that
just
we are
strangers, yeah.
And I have 2 girls and I'm like, whoa, that was a hard question to me.
Yeah.
Because if I haven't been able to, what we are trying to achieve by doing this or talk about this is നമ്മളുടെ പിള്ളേർ നമ്മളുടെ അടുത്തോട്ട് വന്ന് പറയാൻ പറ്റുമോ?
Exactly. I think
Early enough. Not after.
resilience in that, I would think resilience is something that is, I don't think we should make that a let's make children resilient. That's impractical goal. I don't think we can make ourselves resilient. But if you look at different terms or different kind of state of being, like adaptability, like when we were talking about earlier on, like adaptability is the kind of positive, like, you know,
Way of saying it.
But there's the other end of that scale is avoidance, which is what we're doing. But then we avoid our problems and challenges, and then on the outside it looks like we are being adaptable because we're kind of like, oh, okay, let's just kind of move on.
Don't want to
But-
face the discomfort.
Exactly. But if you kind of like look at it, imaginary triangle, resilience being at the top, adaptability, and then obviously like avoidance, like if you accept all 3 of that kind of state, you know, and it's okay to kind of go from one to the other kind of thing. But, you know, just obviously as long as you are able to recognize the problem, we're not able to understand like how we're dealing with the challenges. Like, are you being avoidant? Are you being adaptable? Are you being resilient? Kind of things, you know what I mean? Like in some situations, if you're, for example, if you're facing bullying in school, what does it mean to be resilient? If your situation's not changing, you being resilient means nothing.
Well, let's
know what I
talk
mean?
about that actually as a scenario. So when I get told, I sort of say, oh, remember what mommy says? We, shrug our shoulders and say, and to that person, we say, shrug our shoulders and walk away is what we're saying. Now, is that being resilient? I mean, we still can figure out to a certain extent, is it true as such? But that being said, I'm like, okay, this is a scenario maybe that has
So what do
been
you mean,
presented
shrug your
as
shoulders and...
well, what I say essentially is, look, that situation might be problematic at the time to yourself if that person stood in front of you saying
For
certain
bullying
things.
point of view.
Yeah, from a bullying point of view. I said, to a degree, now I'm questioning myself and everything that we're doing. But essentially what I've said is to make that problem smaller rather than bigger by saying, oh, well, if they're saying, whatever they're saying to you, shrug your shoulders and walk away from the situation.
So, for example, if someone is saying, well, you're not wearing a nice dress.
And literally say, oh, well,
But
walk
then
away.
if the child has enough confidence to think that she looks beautiful in that dress,
Yeah.
that will come from parents and her own self-worth point of view. We're like, oh, well, you're not finding it pretty.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's okay.
So how we have to get that inner voice into them so that they can deal with that while we support from them from home.
So the
because
validation the child will be seeking is not from other people, but from herself. And if she...
While you can say, like, look, just walk away, try and, like, not kind of give a lot of attention to that. Sometimes
person,
you're just a bit like, I can't help it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Number toilet like I couldn't see you guys. Like this is right after our kind of like cafe. Like, we were kind of talking about resilience and stuff, and my inner voice was like, "Oh no, what am I gonna do? What?" But that is your experience. That's your makeup. That's your kind of thing, and all the stuff that kind of goes on. Like regardless of whether you're an adult, you have got the skills, you've got the awareness. Some of the things that are innate in you, like, are not something that you can kind of help. Do you know what I mean?
So what we can do for our children point of view, if they've encountered something unhappy, I'm going to use that instead of adversity because it's easier for me to understand.
Yeah.
Then the best case scenario that we can do is actually let them speak.
Yeah.
And hope, and tell us what's happened, and then explore a bit more, dig a bit deeper, saying, okay, why did that make you feel sad?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And explore the reason
definitely,
behind their behavior.
I mean, 100%. We know that most of parenting is listening. So when you allow your child to speak and have less of your thoughts put into them,
for them to get that out. Yeah.
How are you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling this. Before we were doing journal, like me and my daughter would journal and we would do it together. And I'm like, oh, what is your feeling? Ipa might just walk around in the room while she journals by herself.
Oh, that's lovely.
That's
what a wonderful habit.
What a good place for her to be.
Probably I haven't done it in a really long time, but then we just tried to restart it. And she is doing it all by herself.
Oh, brilliant.
But interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just from the last
exactly.
time. So what have I done differently? Nothing. She's just grown up a little bit more.
And you've instilled or like you've planted the seeds.
Yeah.
That's what you've done. And that's exactly what parenting is about. Like, I think.
That's a good way of saying it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've done good that way.
You have.
But at the time, I thought this was more because I was facing some issues and challenges with that. So trying to get the feelings out was important. And I've just found how we're going to do this. Or even actually, it was more about instilling habits. And habits is a or a routine.
Exactly.
So routine is so important. So me and my bigger one, we both hate a routine and we fiercely fight it. We do all our best to go against it, but it's actually the only thing that keeps us sane.
Yeah.
But we really don't want it. Because I'm trying to get this routine in place for my bigger one, who does better, but she fiercely wants to fight it. So I'm to try and get her into this kind of mindful calm away from the screens so many hours before bedtime. We decided I'm going to read this book. And I wanted to read and finish this book that I've started, I think, like beginning of last year or something. So here we are. I'm in my bed and Etsy, my bigger one, wanting to read. But how she wants me to read to her. I said, but I need my time too. You have your time. You are now quite good at reading. So let's just hear. Okay, you read. And I see the youngest one creeping into bed with me. And all three of us have one book.
Yeah.
And this happened for 2 nights in a row.
Ah.
And the third night, the little one, took my book, put it in my radio,
You made a habit out of it.
Oh.
There you
and
go.
put it in her bit. And then she sat down in hers and just go, but except waiting for us to get into it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We need the habit.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when we have habits, we have structure.
Yeah.
And once then it becomes when we get out of structure, how do we go back into
Yeah.
it? But that's the next stage. But one of the main things that I've learned is that if you are able to, as parents, have some form of habits in
Yeah.
place that are good, which is great.
Yeah.
As
I'm
a-
thinking about medically speaking, neuroscience wise, you're creating a pathway.
Yeah.
Just like us, our brain's wonderful and it's neuroplastic.
Yeah.
All that means is that it can rewrite itself, which is great.
Exactly.
And if, especially with kids' point of view, if we are able to change our inner voice and change it a bit more compassionate and make it learning is hard and grow and learn to be a bit more self-validating, self-regulating. These are all been, and that compassion will help build the resilience, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think we can change that inner voice in our children. And just like it's external habits,
Yeah.
it can be a habit when something bad happens. You cry, and that's okay. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that is a really good example. I mean, routine, yes, it is important. And I think that's exactly like if we look at as inner voice as well, that is something that you can establish. Just like in how you
Yeah.
develop a routine, your responses can be trained as well. Brain's very fascinating in a way, but it can also be very simple as well. I like the example that you kind of gave earlier on. Like, and if someone says that's not water, that's something else, you know.
Do you believe it or do you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like with my little one, you know, he's 4, but there's been a lot of things in his nursery where like anything that if he doesn't really like something, he always kind of says, "You're not coming to my birthday party." And I'm like, well, I gave birth to you, so I'm going to be there. No, even if there's not going to be anyone else, I'm going to be there.
I thought it was to some kid in the place when you
No, he says that to me and his dad and everyone else. But that is the kind of talks that are kind of happening in nursery.
I just love the innocence of it.
I know. So the other day he said, one of the little boys, you know, when obviously like they are 4, they're 3, whatever sort of thing, and when they kind of fight or then have issues, they go, "You're not coming to my birthday party." So that is the way of, and that's how it begins. That is a way of, you know, making sure that you get the, you know, you're saying like, "I'm not happy with whatever that kind of happened here, and this is my way of controlling." And obviously the person hearing or the kid hearing that, it is going to be upsetting, you know, because obviously someone saying, "Oh, you're not coming to my birthday party," they will take that to heart. So how do you respond to that? How do you deal with whatever emotions that
But the
evokes in
behavior
you?
is showing.
Exactly. So one thing that we're practicing now is that if someone says, "You're not coming to my birthday party," you say, "Oh, that's okay. I hope you have a really good, birthday party." So you train yourself. When we tried repeating that like a lot of times, I would say to him like, "Oh, by the way, you're not coming to my birthday party because I'm not happy with what you're wearing." And then he would say like, "That's okay, mummy. I hope you really have a really good birthday party." And same way if they say like, "I don't like what you're wearing," I'm like, "Oh, that's okay. I just like it. That's okay if you don't like it." So whatever the experience, whatever the
like it.
challenge, you know, it's the same way that you're instilling a routine in place. You make sure that inner dialogue, you know, you practice whatever. That's a tiniest little thing, little scenario that we're talking about. But imagine if that kid grows up, goes to high school, and they're getting bullied. "Oh, I don't like the way you look," because that is going to, you know, you're going to be getting whatever.
It's coming, all of
Like,
us.
that's okay. Again, resilience, it will go hand in hand, but like you're saying, like, I can't change the way someone behaves towards you based on whatever, you know, but I can change the way
I react.
I
react
react,
to it.
or sometimes you're not going to react. How that affects me, kind of thing. I'm gonna put like my, do you know what I mean? Like, so my
So yeah.
confidence and my skills are based on what I do with that information or what I do with that treatment or reactions. I'm not going to let them affect, you know.
If I were to bring that towards us and parenting point of view, I'm the mother and my son is there, and it's hard to be zen and calm all the time.
Well, I think what you're trying to or going to say is emotional regulation.
Yeah.
So let's explain what regulation is.
Yeah. So
Either scenario or whatever.
in my understanding. So I'll explain the scenario first, I suppose. if my son is having, if I say no to him and I'm trying to set a boundary, a boundary is basically if he splashes water in the bath to me and it comes outside and it hits me, then he's out of the bath.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've told him, and he knows that if that happens, then that's it. And I try to be calm when I do this. He will be very, very upset, of course, because he's unhappy with it, which makes sense. And I'll hug him, and I was like, but then this is why we do it. As a parent, a child crying is very triggering.
Of course.
And once I am triggered, we all tend to be unhappy and unsettled and agitated is the word I look. And if I had no sleep and if I'm just had a lot of caffeine and if I'm already anxious, if I'm PMSing on top of all that, I have less ability to tell myself, okay, I'm not feeling very great right now. I have to how do I respond to this? How do I tell him, okay, Danny, I'm here. Okay, I get it. That was very upsetting, but this is why we did it. We've had this rule for a long time. But if my cup is empty and I'm exhausted, tired, angry, anxious, hormonally fueled, I'm more likely to react.
Yeah. That's okay.
So yeah, I like a matchstick or like a firework, I suppose. So I'm more likely to say, "Hey, Danny, that's enough."
Yeah.
I've said his name, but hey, that's enough. Why are you doing this? Well, you know this, and sometimes it happens. We're all parents. We will all shout at our kids, and I'm as a person, I don't enjoy shouting because I feel awful after it, and the guilt of it will just engulf me.
We've all done it, so we're not saying that this is not something we've
I'm
all
not
done
perfect,
it.
But it's for a child. It's it's not natural for them to see like a put together
It's impossible.
Yeah, for them, they need to know you're gonna get angry, you're gonna get emotional, you're gonna what do you do after? So that is the thing that we need to focus on. That is the thing that they need to learn.
What do we do? So reacting, we understood that this is what emotional regulation is, or dysregulation, where we're not able to regulate our feelings right before. So
and
we're not
adults.
And we are not in. So what the child expects us to regulate, but we are not in control of our emotions.
Yeah.
And I suppose just putting it in there, a child always does better with an irregulated parent. And
always.
If you have a dysregulated child and a dysregulated parents, we have in my house, mommy's about to be a volcano.
Yeah.
And I say it now to her because it's a warning shot, because that's when I'm saying, really, I have to regulate myself at this point. So please help me regulate.
Yeah.
And number two, it's like, venda mola, venda, don't. And she
Begging
knows.
you to.
And she knows. So it's a bit of both of what you're saying. You're saying that, how are we? And Palavrasham volcano has erupted in our houses. So the question is, and she does really well with my husband because, of course, he is always
Calm.
Regulated, calm. And, okay, yes.
Saint Daddy.
Yeah.
I am so jealous.
But men are like that.
Yeah.
Kids
We're
are
more
allowed to be a
emotionally
little
fueled.
more.
Yeah.
The other 100% sure, Anna, they are much more often worse with us mommies.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have.
They feel
I don't
safe
mind
as-
it that way. I don't mind it that
Yeah.
way. They can be safe there.
Yeah.
But it's just having those things like warning shots. It's coming. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to. I'll say it here. I'll say it anywhere. I have not quite I won't say I've hit peak with it. It's a process. I am learning to regulate my emotions before we have a volcano eruption. So, but I've fixed how to fix what to do after.
How to recover.
Exactly.
There's a word that I'm thinking about. A conflict resolution is a term that I use, and me and my best friend, we speak about it often. It can be with our partner, it can be with our child. So if I were to blow up on my son or very angry, and I've done that, I sometimes take a wee minute, and then I take it. We're both quiet at that point because we're like, and he's upset, of course. And I take a minute, and it's like, okay, and I hug him, and we hug each other, and I do a tapping motion for him, like a hug, if you think about it, and that calms both of us down.
Okay.
Because we're both my heart beating slower, his heart beats matches mine, and it works well. And then I say, hey, Mama's really sorry. Mama was really angry and anxious, and that was not okay that I shouted at you, and I am really sorry I did that. And I think there was once Danny said, "It's okay, Mama," and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Thank you.
They
As
often say that.
"Yeah,
They
and
are
it's so
more.
nice."
I think we do.
What do you think is the right? I mean,
There's
no right or wrong.
There's no
Okay.
right or wrong, but it really depends on what helps you sleep at night. Do
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
for me, the way I would kind of say is like, say if I am out and like doing field work and stuff, and there's like a lot of chaos and stuff like that, I'm gonna have to be the regulated person. When I'm at home, my safe place, I don't have to be. Yes, it will be ideal if
Okay.
I'm regulated.
Okay.
The child that you're raising, they don't just need to see you as a parent. They need to see you as an adult, a functional adult, and sometimes dysfunctional. That's okay for them to see you
Human.
losing your and it's okay. And obviously, as long as you know,
We
you
can
know,
bounce back.
exactly, or just say like if you kind of go up, absolutely like off your kind of
Head.
apologizing
Nice
or
way of putting
repairing that kind of repairing work, but
Repair.
exactly. Like for me, like the minute that I'm inside my door, my house, like a home mobile, അതിനകത്തൊരു അവസാനം ഒരു ഇത് പറയത്തില്ലേ, like it is my personal space. Who I am, what I do in my personal space makes me me. That you need to take comfort in the fact that like I've been out in the world like fighting like real fights and stuff, and when I come back, yes, I have a child, I am a parent, but I'm also like a child that I once was, and I'm an adult, and I am gonna have like
Yeah.
emotional things, and I need to be okay with that. And if you're okay with that, if you give yourself that grace, and like if you give yourself that permission to be
And
whoever
we
you
accept
are,
you the way you are.
your child will too, and they will learn to accept that side of yours. If you imagine, if you have a put together parent who's always conscious parenting or gentle parenting, and
The
you
weight,
know,
impossible.
the weight will
the
drop
child,
at some point. I think.
it's not just that. What is a child seeing? Mom is
Perfectionism.
good. Exactly.
You
So
don't want that. Yeah.
it is important to like my personal parenting goal is like I'm not gonna like say I'm gonna be a gentle parent, conscious parent, blah blah. Yes, I will tap into all that kind of stuff. But my goal is like at the end of the day, if I had fun with my child, it doesn't matter if I was a parent, a friend, I will like go between different roles.
roles.
Absolutely, the roles.
Exactly.
If we're being authentic to ourselves, we're less likely to burn out.
Yes.
As well, I think, and they know. I think children notice when we're being authentic,
Exactly.
and we can be. And if I show my son that I can be authentically weird and funny and cheerful and mad, and and my son knows that if I'm hungry, I'm
I
grumpy.
can be hungry.
Yeah, and as I say that we have a saying, it's like hungry mama is a grumpy mama,
Yeah.
and he knows that now. And
Yeah.
I was like, I am. When I'm hungry, I am very grumpy.
Yeah.
And sometimes, someday he will say, "Have you had a snack?"
So that's great. Okay, so I've just realized something. You have just put a name to that emotion, and I'm actually going. My little one has a favorite book that I've been trying to read and haven't got quite there. So when you were saying like repair, when we are doing that, do you name your emotions?
You do. You name it to tame it. First of all, like
Shame it. Maybe not shame
Not
it.
shame,
Accept
tame
it.
it. Tame it. You
Tame it.
name
Oh,
it
that
to
sounds
tame
awesome.
it. Well, if it needs a bit of shaming, if it's absolutely awful,
Why not?
yes, shame it.
Yeah.
You know, but naming it to tame it. But first of all, you need to be aware of that's where like your kind of legwork kind of takes importance. Like if you're aware of like and if the fact that like you're like my limit is just up to here, like, and then like I blow up, and this is what I can do. This is why I've done it. And then if your child does something that was
Yeah.
not okay, holding them responsible.
Accountable.
Exactly. So.
And consequences for crossing the boundary.
Exactly. These are key words that I use in our kind
which we never had as part of our.
growing up. Absolutely not.
So flipping it to the other side, what happens if you don't process anything? What happens if you're brushing everything under the carpet and we don't tell our kids something's wrong? I keep thinking about this horror story that we hear on the news. In a 23-year-old, I think,
Yeah.
he killed so many people. I think he killed his brother, family members, and all we see is that this is a mass cold-blooded murderer. As a parent, I'm gonna and as a clinician, I suppose what I thought about was like, well, but why? Was he a psychopath? Okay, if it's a psychopath, it makes a bit more sense, I suppose, because but then why would anyone do that?
I think the only thing we can conclude from that is that if you are faced with problems and you find yourself in situations that you've never been before, so one is nurturing your kids and not showing, because we are now in that generations that we don't have as much. Pandate kalatha, if there was things that were going at home, financial situation, the kids were a bit more aware of it. Right now, we try and keep them shielded from our emotions, our issues, and it's not as well talked about or പിള്ളേരെ അറിയിക്കാതിരിക്കുക. അപ്പം അവരെ അറിയിക്കാതിരുന്നിട്ട് അവർ ഒരു ഏജ് കഴിയുമ്പോൾ if they don't know about it, they've not dealt with certain emotions or needs or understood these problems, then there's no resilience there. There's no adaptability
No
there.
growth.
There's no growth there. And then when you then get to a point going, so നമ്മളെ അവരെ ഒന്നും പഠിപ്പിക്കാതിരുന്നിട്ട് kept everything away from everyone else in the family, and you are shouldering everything yourself, and all of a sudden it goes, I can't take it anymore. Nee bidicho. And then you've never faced anything, and then all of a sudden you're faced with everything in the world and you have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
You don't have connections within the society, you don't have connections within home,
if
you don't have anything, you have nothing. And then all of a sudden you're having to deal with it, and the people that he
There's
loved,
no one to rescue you.
there's no one to rescue you.
We
So
would think about the drama triangle. I've interrupted you a couple of times today.
no,
I'm so
it's
sorry.
okay, don't worry.
The drama triangle: rescuer, victim, perpetuator. So if you've had your entire life someone rescuing you, and I'm a rescuer by genetics or by my nurturing, and I rescue people, and I tend to rescue my son, and I'm actively working on stopping it. If we were to talk about this hypothetically, this theoretical, this murderer person, I suppose, and if he's had an entire life of being rescued, the minute the rescuer stops rescuing, it becomes a perpetrator. So what my understanding is that this person is expecting them to rescue him, and they couldn't, or they stopped, and they automatically became the villain.
Yes.
And hatred towards people not helping them could have turned him. And so it's understanding the behavior behind the reasoning behind the behavior, isn't it? It's actually really tricky.
Yeah.
It is tricky. Like, I think of the time when I was working in sexual harmful behaviour, the young people would be telling me what exactly they've done and what they will be doing.
God.
They'll be looking at
That
my
is
face
a
and
completely different next level.
exactly.
exposure.
So they will be telling, I'm going to be doing this, and you would look in their face, and then obviously kind of say, right, okay, so I'm going to call that a behavior. I'm going to we're going to deal with the factual stuff and all. And then when you go away from that space, how that impacts you, and how do you take that away from you? And then if you bring that into your life or your family, what does that mean?
So you were facing offenders and having to analyze the behavior, which is significantly high up on
That's
that
on
scale.
the scale of other end, but we all do that in our own lives.
But what I'm
kids
trying to say is
too.
when we have the TV on with the kids around, that is a similar kind of thing.
Upon it, even school, and difficult, obviously, I know where my son is going to go for school, and I love that place, but I also know
All the
where
bad
the
stuff
other
that it-
kids
Yeah.
who are going to be in his class and where they come from. So I can prepare, my little
Can't
one.
protect them all
I
the time.
cannot do that. Again, it starts with, if I kind of gave an example of consent earlier on, where and if someone takes your food without your permission, that's you need to say no, that's
That's what
and you
that's
need
what consent.
exactly. So couple of few important lessons like that you need to teach them, and obviously when they are exposed to that kind of behavior, I can think of one particular case of mine where the child, his 3.5-year-old, is enacting sexual scenes and stuff based on where they come from. So if your child is exposed to that, how are they going to make sense of that?
And the biggest person who's going to notice anything is within the family. So you need to be able to come off screens and know the slight changes that the children are doing.
If you're lucky, though, you will. In most cases, you would not, because these behaviours will, whether it's your child or other children, they would all come out when they're in that sort of social situation, and then you might hear about it or you might not hear about it.
Gosh, as if parenting wasn't hard enough.
Again, going back to that tree, what you see, if you imagine your child, or if your child has that tree, what you see on the surface is not what's going to happening within their brain, or
You have to be curious.
Exactly. So that only that tree would be able to, unless you're an expert.
So you're saying, so what I was trying to say is that there should be some cues that within the house you should be able to see small changes.
Yeah.
Be drugs or sexual abuse, those
Yeah.
kind of stuff. You're hoping that you know them well enough that there might be changes. You're saying that it might not be, so you actually do
Sorry,
need to do much more digging.
Well, I
No,
suppose-
you don't. You don't. What you do is, if you are planting that tree, you make sure that is in the perfect place. You make sure that's got the light, the water. You set them up for life, the beginning of that tree. Everything else depends on the roots. And unfortunately, you just have to stand back and then just kind of trust in the process that
Coming back to the biggest the topic, I suppose, what the reason why we want kids to be children and ourselves to be resilient is to cut down on the burnout and the mental health, and the only way we can do it is actually planting the seeds, boundaries,
planting the
consent,
seeds, yes.
having healthy
Yeah.
boundaries, and having
And
and seed of in validation, not and ideally not seeking external validation, which I do, and I've recognized
There's nothing
that.
wrong with that. We all
Yeah.
have partners. We
And it's
go
genetically, yeah.
naturally to our partner for
Yeah.
getting it.
Yeah.
The problem is making sure that you,
It's a trustworthy person that you're asking.
yes, and also that they are able to name their emotions. So,
Yes.
for example, the book I was reading, you can look, well, this is an emotion.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to go take it to someone. Which one?
That's what I've done in my
It's
marriage.
quite good. നമുക്ക് പഠിക്കണം, because when we have kids, we have to really, that's when we go, oh, I need to fix on my own traumas.
Yeah.
I need to fix on my own issues, because otherwise it just sort of boils over.
Self-parent ourselves. We have to parent ourselves, I think.
And couples have to help each other out,
Yeah.
so that when they're younger, they're able to fight
Yeah.
through much more. They're able to bounce back and go, oh well, you know.
Yeah.
So
And we
that's
can build
actually-
them up.
So that's why now
yeah.
is the time
Yeah.
to understand this.
Yeah.
Fix on your own issues,
And there's
or
no
try.
give ourselves
And
grace.
grace
Isn't
as
we
well,
only
yeah.
try. There
Yeah.
is nothing worse you can do. And there's no day like today. I mean, if I'm in my 50s and I do it today, still a win.
Still a win. Still a win.
Still a win. And if I'm 32 or maybe 33, I don't know. I need to check my age today, and I'm trying. Fine.
Still
and if
fine.
I learn to a certain extent to regulate myself without relying on my kids all the time, which if I can be a bit more self-reliant, I hope my son if I ever have a daughter and my partner and my family around me, my bubble will learn from it.
Yeah.
We change, our family changes, country changes, and the world changes.
Yay. That's a positive way to leave it.
That's
From
it.
all the trauma that we discussed.
That's small thing.
Okay.
That's it from us.
Tom.
Adios.